and they'll sweep the overripes shortly thereafter to kind of remove everything, as this is the tail end of the harvest season.
Right.
So
And obviously,
this tree in particular has some mixed maturity, so we've got some unripe cherries, properly ripe, and a few that were overripe and dried on the tree. You want to get these off as soon as possible, so that way the tree doesn't waste the time and energy on these kind of cherries. And you can use these as more of a commercial lot. Still a lot of commercial coffee here in Thailand, so there's a local market for things like this.
right.
But yeah.
And then with obviously with selective picking with specialty grade coffee, you want to pick the riper fruit and obviously leave the ones that are still green and yellow, so that way they reach maturity. And typically you just kind of tug on the coffee fruit. If it pops off easily,
Yep.
then that's usually a coffee that's ready to be harvested. And the ones that don't pop off, even if they kind of look the right color, you usually want to leave them. Like these little guys that are still kind of yellow and red, they still are probably don't have the highest amount of sugar concentration.
Right, and ideally, if it is properly ripe, it's not going to take a whole lot of effort to tug, and you
Exactly.
won't get a whole lot of tearing right around the base of the fruit, and you won't pull the stem with it.
Right.
So,
Well,
most ideal.
and again, like for the natural yeast and things too, they want to
You can see the
have the highest amount of sugar content, so they're productive. You won't have as much yeast activity.
so you can see the sugar.
Right.
There you go.
Voila. That is a
Proper amount of mucilage around it.
And again,
So this will pulp nice and easily through our pulpers if we're going to do a honey or a wash process. Whereas the greens, they won't pulp because the mucilage hasn't developed, and it's actually very hard fruit, so it's very difficult to peel the skin away from the parchment. Take a look there a little bit closer. And see, this has absolutely no mucilage layer. It's not sticky or filled with sugar content yet. So this, if you were to successfully pulp this, so some people, they will actually soak it first, and they'll be able to pulp it after it's soaked in water. And but typically, if you were to process this coffee, there's not much mucilage content for fermentation, and secondarily, you'll end up with typically a much more astringent and dry cup.
Right.
So not a very sweet coffee if you were to pulp that versus this.
Yeah. And again, that's just kind of the first stage of coffee. Obviously, is getting a tree to maturity, and then just waiting to selectively pick the coffee fruit. And this is going to really make or break the coffee just right at the picking stage. Again, if the pickers are trained to pick it and are incentivized to pick it only when it's at its ripest point, you're going to get just higher coffee quality overall. That'll help separate just a specialty grade coffee from a commercial grade coffee, is just having trained staff that'll pick the fruit right at the right stage. You're doing the coffee progression
Yeah, so
set up right there.
Yeah.
Classic. So yeah, he's just kind of setting up the kind of the under ripe or just the green fruit to the next level of like right in the middle where you want that perfect color of red, and then it starts to go a little bit too far past that, and then obviously to the point where it'll fully dry on the tree.
Even this fruit here is past the point where there's actually we measure coffee cherry sugar content with what's known as like a Brix meter. And so we check the sugar content, and the cherry at about here has actually already hit the peak sugar content that this tree will probably have its potential for. And so after this point of ripeness, the sugar content will actually start to go back down. So low sugar content here, sugar content builds as it ripens, and then it starts to drop off again.
Right.
So, yeah.
Pretty fantastic.